myself, and is Professor Andy Miah, who's Chair of Ethics and Emerging Technologies at the University of the West of Scotland. Andy has undertaken research at the last 6 Olympic Games, focusing on the changing media landscape and the rise of new media. His book for MIT Press is titled A Digital Olympics and is due out later this year, so keep an eye out for that. He is part of the meta-evaluation peer review team for the London 2012 Games and is leading the hashtag Media 2012 network. If you have no idea what any of that means, then do get to grips with Twitter. It's a fantastic piece of technology that will change your life and will take up many an hour on tube journeys in and around the capital or beyond. So, Andy, straight over to you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks to PODIUM for getting both me here, but also the Media 2012 network, which was just mentioned. Can I get the lights down, please? So I'm in this for the long haul. As was mentioned by Wes, I've been to 6 Olympic Games. I plan to go to the next 12. I've not worked out the figures yet, but winter and summer. That's how it works out. But when I think of legacy, I don't just think of what's in it for London or the UK. I think about what's in it for the Olympic movement, and how does what London undertake contribute to that development as a social movement. So the work that I'll talk about, hopefully in 8 minutes, but this is like a 40-minute presentation, so wish me luck, we'll talk to the notion of the 360-degree Olympic media experience. So that journey that I've undertaken has really taken me through different sorts of media experiences, from the broadcast accredited to the citizen independent journalist. So what I want to do is to talk about each of these areas in very quite concise detail, but to ask you to think about what role the media has in society, and to consider how this may be changing as a result of the way in which citizen media, social media, things like Twitter, as was mentioned, are changing how people engage with things like mega events. So when I think of the Games, I think of what will people be using Twitter for? What will they be doing to organise their activity? And I'll talk a bit about some examples that took place around Vancouver in particular, just last year, this time last year. But focus really on the beginning point for this, which was Sydney 2000, the first moment when I encountered the non-accredited media, the people that were not really covering sport, covering everything about this festival that doesn't involve people getting dressed up in shorts. And this is partly what really focused my attention, is to realise that when you're in a press conference and you've got the political editor of the New York Times there listening to hear what's going on, there must be more to it than just a sports competition. So Sydney was a really interesting starting point because it opened up this arena whereby non-accredited media were just beginning to grow and flourish. So by Salt Lake, there were already 2 independent media centres set up by the cities during the Olympic Games, which became venues not just for, and in fact not at this point at all, for citizen media, but the professional journalists who were covering non-sporting content. By the time we get to Athens, we've got a massive venue in the city centre, the Zappeion building, historically important for the city, that was furnishing facilities for these journalists, because the problem is that a host city at some point realises that with all this hype and energy and enthusiasm, there's not actually a space to talk about the city. The media centres that exist for the broadcasts and journalists are pretty much for the sports information. So people want to cover and tell other stories, and the city in particular needs to do that. So it sets up these things called non-accredited media centres that provide that facility. This is Torino's centre, which by then had become a massive investment. It was a clear non-Olympic but significant venue in the city centre. Growing numbers of people contributing towards it, and the first time where we saw bloggers wanting to get involved and accredit with those facilities. This continued to grow. By the time we got to Beijing, it was kind of a blip in the history, frankly, to be honest. It was something that was very different. In China, you needed a J visa to cover anything, so you couldn't really do much if you didn't have one. And a lot of people didn't have one. So they had 11,000 people at their non-accredited media centre, but it was primarily professional journalists. Vancouver, and this was really a watershed for this development and the rise of citizen journalists. And I want to play you a clip from a feature film that's come out of that. So there's now actually a feature film that's been developed about the social media scene at the Vancouver Olympics. And this is just a clip from it. It's already premiered in Vancouver, and it's looking for somewhere to exhibit in festivals in the UK. So if you're able to program stuff, get in touch with them. It's called With Glowing Hearts. Oops, let's go back.
I like cybernetic technology, I like mathematics, I like science. My favorite part about social media is being able to sit there or be on the go wherever you are and suddenly be connected to people that really share your exact interests.
Social media these days means that a
plugs into your social graph, your social life, your personal relationships. The human network, the social network, is now taking the place of the news network where information is collected and disseminated.
So what we have is radical overhaul of what it counts to be media.
We know how to live stream, we know how to upload, we know how to make footage, we know how to get online, we know how to Twitter, we know how to blog.